Most people think getting rich is about numbers, about working harder, saving smarter, or finding that one golden opportunity that changes everything. But Machiavelli would laugh at that illusion, because to him, money was never about mathematics. It was about psychology, about control, about understanding the hidden forces that move people long before they realize they're being moved. The pursuit of wealth is not a financial game, it's a psychological one. And like every psychological game, most players don't even know they're in it. That's why they lose. They chase comfort instead of control. They chase validation instead of value. They measure success by what can be seen, while the powerful measure success by what can be hidden. The poor ask, "How can I make more?" The Machiavellian asks, "Who must I become to make others move?" Because the truth is brutal. You don't get rich by earning. You get rich by positioning. Machiavelli understood that wealth is not distributed by fairness or effort, but by the architecture of influence, an invisible web where psychology determines everything. The rich are not smarter. They're more aware of human weakness. They understand fear, desire, ego, and dependency so deeply that they can build entire empires around those instincts. That's the dark psychology of getting rich. It's not about greed, it's about leverage. Most people will never see this because they're trapped inside the illusion of morality. They believe money is evil, that ambition corrupts, that wealth must be earned the honest way. But that's the first trick of the powerful, convincing others that integrity means submission. Convincing the masses that wanting more is wrong, so they never question who benefits from their obedience. You think billionaires become powerful because they love money? No. They understand what money does to the human mind. They understand that once people taste a certain level of comfort, they'll protect it with their soul. They'll trade freedom for stability, principles for safety, dignity for predictability. And that is the first hidden law of wealth. Comfort is the cage that keeps men loyal. Machiavelli didn't believe in loyalty, at least, not the kind most people imagine. He saw loyalty as a currency, bought and sold through fear, need, and reward. People don't stay loyal because of love or belief. They stay loyal because they're afraid of what happens if they're cut off from the source of their comfort. That's how kingdoms stayed intact. Not through kindness, but through control of resources. You didn't need to chain a man's hands. You only needed to control the hand that fed him. Fast forward to today, the principle hasn't changed. Companies use salaries the way kings used gold. Politicians use welfare the way monarchs use bread. Social media platforms use dopamine the way rulers used religion to keep people addicted to something that feels like freedom but isn't. And yet, everyone keeps running, keeps chasing, keeps competing in a game designed by those who already won it. Machiavelli would call it the theater of wealth, a performance where the actors believe they're rising while the audience quietly decides who gets the spotlight. The dark psychology behind money is simple. Control the narrative, and you control the value. Control the value, and you control the people. Look around. The system rewards visibility, not wisdom. People broadcast their lifestyles as proof of worth. But every flex, every post, every humble brag is data that tells the real players how to manipulate you. When people know what you crave, they can sell you illusions until you die. That's why Machiavelli would never play loud. He'd never show his wealth. He'd never let you know whether he was winning or losing. Because the moment people can measure you, they can plan against you. He understood something the modern world has forgotten. Money isn't power. Information is. And the richest people on earth aren't just those who have money. They're the ones who know what others will do to get it. The dark psychology of getting rich starts here. Learn to study behavior before you study balance sheets. Learn to read hunger before you read markets. Because in the end, the economy is just organized human desire. If you can predict that desire, you can print your own fortune. But that requires detachment. Emotional distance. Most can't stomach that. They get too invested. They get greedy, panicked, desperate. They treat money like oxygen instead of a weapon. The Machiavellian never does. He treats money as a mirror, a reflection of his own psychological control. If he's losing money, it's because he's lost discipline. If he's making more, it's because his influence has deepened. That's the essence of the dark game. Understanding that every coin is a signal, not a prize. You can't think like a worker and expect to rule like a strategist. The worker obeys schedules. The strategist manipulates them. The worker waits for permission. The strategist creates demand. The worker plays for survival. The strategist plays for silence, the kind of silence that means he's no longer part of the noise, but the one orchestrating it. Machiavelli knew that people crave the illusion of fairness. They want to believe success can be earned by effort alone. But if it were true, the hardest workers would be the wealthiest, and you already know they aren't. The dark psychology of wealth reveals that money doesn't flow to the most deserving. It flows to the most deliberate, to those who can control perception, build dependency, and engineer scarcity. Scarcity is one of the purest forms of control. People don't value abundance. They value what they believe they can lose. That's why the powerful never give unlimited access to their time, their money, or their favor. They remain slightly out of reach. That distance creates fascination, and fascination is a form of soft dominance. Every rich empire is built on that principle. From luxury brands to tech monopolies, they all sell the same thing: controlled access. And the crowd keeps paying for it, not because they need the product, but because they crave the feeling of proximity to power. The Machiavellian doesn't chase proximity, he creates it. He understands that perception is profit, that the illusion of exclusivity generates loyalty stronger than any contract. So the first step toward mastering the dark psychology of wealth is to stop thinking like a consumer. Stop asking, "What can I get?" Start asking, "What do people want to feel, and how can I control that feeling?" Because money doesn't flow toward effort, it flows toward influence. And influence is the ability to shape emotion without being detected. That's how the powerful move. That's how they build dynasties in silence while others chase applause. The dark truth is this: you don't need to be rich to understand money. You need to understand people, their fears, their hungers, their endless search for meaning. Learn that, and money will come as a side effect. That's the first hidden law. And once you understand it, you'll never look at wealth or yourself the same way again. There is a truth about wealth most people refuse to face. Money doesn't just buy things, it buys behavior. Every system of power, every empire, every corporation is built on this fact. The rich don't get rich because they love luxury. They get rich because they understand influence economics. They know that if you can shape what people believe about money, you can make them work for you forever, even while they think they're free. Machiavelli would call this the invisible architecture of control. It doesn't look like domination. It looks like opportunity. In the modern world, chains don't come in iron. They come in incentives, promotions, bonuses, recognition, likes, titles, all the soft tools that make obedience feel like ambition. You think you're rising, but you're climbing a ladder someone else built, and they already know how high you'll go before you stop. The dark psychology of getting rich begins with this shift. Stop trying to win inside other people's structures. Build your own. Because every structure has a purpose, and if you didn't design it, you are part of its purpose, not the beneficiary. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Kings ruled not just by force, but by the design of dependency. They gave land to loyal nobles, titles to soldiers, gold to merchants not as gifts, but as traps. Every reward was a leash. Every privilege came with invisible strings. Today, corporations use the same method. They pay you just enough to forget your dream. They praise you just enough to keep you loyal. They promote you just enough to make you feel progress but never freedom. Because freedom destroys control. That's the second hidden law. Control is more profitable than generosity. The truly wealthy don't hoard money. They distribute it strategically. They pay to build allegiance. They invest to build loyalty. They give to create gravity. Because whoever controls the flow of money controls the emotional climate around them. Think about it. The boss doesn't need to threaten you to make you obey. The bank doesn't need to yell to make you pay. The government doesn't need to beg to make you work. They simply design systems that ensure your comfort is tied to compliance. That's Machiavellian mastery, when control feels like choice. The psychology behind this is ancient. Humans are not logical creatures. We are emotional beings with rational justifications. We follow comfort, approval, and familiarity long before we follow truth. The powerful understand this instinctively. They don't sell products. They sell reassurance. They don't offer freedom. They offer the illusion of it within boundaries they control. Luxury brands promise individuality through conformity. Corporations promise security through submission. Social media promises connection through addiction. And every click, every purchase, every distraction enriches the architect behind the illusion. That's why Machiavelli taught his princes. The wise ruler does not fight the nature of man. He uses it. The rich are not fighting human psychology. They are designing around it. They know that money isn't the end goal, it's the lever that moves desire. Here's the paradox. The more predictable people are, the easier they are to control. And nothing makes people more predictable than the pursuit of comfort and status. Once you understand what people fear losing, you can make them do almost anything. The second hidden law is this: never compete for wealth. Compete for control over behavior. Because the man who controls behavior controls wealth by default. Machiavelli would say, you can take a man's freedom and he will resist. But if you give him luxury and threaten to take it away, he will serve you forever. That is the psychology of modern power, to make people afraid of discomfort, to make survival feel luxurious and luxury feel essential. Once that illusion sets in, rebellion dies quietly. Look around your life. Every bill, every subscription, every dependency is a chain dressed as convenience. You don't even feel it tighten because you were taught to see it as progress. But Machiavelli's mind operated differently. He believed that true power lies not in what you control, but in how few things control you. He'd look at the modern world and say, you've built palaces made of glass and call them freedom. But the one who owns the land beneath them owns you. That's the dark psychology behind generational wealth. It's not about earning, it's about owning structures of dependency. The landlord doesn't work harder than the tenant. The investor doesn't hustle harder than the employee. They simply understand the hidden rule. Money flows upward to those who control the conditions of its creation. So, if you want to escape mediocrity, stop chasing cash. Start studying systems. Who controls the flow? Who benefits from your habits? Who profits from your attention? Once you find that, you'll find your invisible master. But Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to fight that master. He'd tell you to learn from them. Because rebellion without understanding is still servitude, just under a different flag. He'd tell you, don't reject power, redefine it, build your own architecture of control. And that starts within. Most people will never be rich because they can't even control themselves. They're ruled by impulse, by envy, by the need to prove something to the world. Their emotions leak power faster than their hands can earn it. The Machiavellian knows that discipline is the first form of wealth. Because if you can control your reactions, no one can use them against you. The psychology of control begins with your own mind. Before you can influence others, you must silence the noise inside yourself. Most people can't. They react. They overshare. They seek validation. Every emotional leak becomes a point of manipulation. That's why the powerful seem cold, detached, silent. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they refuse to display weakness where it can be exploited. Machiavelli would say, the one who reveals his emotions reveals his weaknesses, and the world has no mercy for weakness. In modern language, that means this: your silence is a weapon, because silence confuses. It makes people wonder what you're thinking. It forces them to fill in the blanks, and in that uncertainty, you gain power. Control begins with perception, and perception begins with restraint. Every rich person who has mastered the dark psychology of money understands this. Never be too eager. Never be too visible. Never be too available. Scarcity creates value, and mystery creates gravity. Combine both, and people will pay to be near you, even when they don't know why. The second hidden law, then, is simple. Power is not in the possession of wealth, but in the orchestration of attention. Attention is the currency of the modern age. It builds brands, leaders, movements. But the tragedy is that most people spend it instead of investing it. They give their attention freely to distractions, to trends, to meaningless noise, while the powerful quietly monetize it. Machiavelli would call that voluntary slavery. A world where people hand over their time, their most valuable resource for entertainment that keeps them docile. So, the dark psychology of getting rich requires a new kind of intelligence, not the intelligence of knowledge, but the intelligence of restraint, the ability to step back, observe, and design, because the world doesn't reward those who shout the loudest. It rewards those who pull the strings. The Machiavellian doesn't chase attention, he engineers it. He doesn't compete for power, he constructs it. He doesn't depend on money, he makes money depend on him. And that is how the architecture of control is built, quietly, strategically, from the shadows. He wasn't just talking about politics. He was describing money itself, because money is the grandest deception of all, a shared illusion, a piece of paper that controls empires because everyone believes it does. And here lies the third hidden law of wealth. Perception is more powerful than possession. In every era, the truly rich don't sell products, they sell beliefs. They understand that perception creates value, and value creates wealth. The thing itself doesn't matter. What matters is what people think it's worth. Gold, land, crypto, art, stock, all are just mirrors reflecting collective belief. And the Machiavellian mind doesn't get trapped chasing the object. He studies the belief behind it, and then manipulates it. This is the psychology of illusion, the power to shape perception so deeply that others willingly give you their freedom in exchange for the comfort of believing they're in control. In modern times, this is how brands dominate nations. A logo replaces a flag, a celebrity replaces a priest, a corporation becomes a god, and the people, desperate for meaning, worship what they can buy. But the Machiavellian doesn't worship, he manufactures gods. He understands the silent truth. The most valuable currency isn't money, it's attention mixed with belief. If you can make people believe your worth, the market will confirm it. That's how mediocrity becomes influence, and influence becomes empire. Consider the influencers who earn millions without skills, without creation, without innovation. They've mastered perception. They've made others believe they have something rare. They've created psychological scarcity. That's all wealth is. Controlled scarcity, amplified by collective emotion. Machiavelli would have admired this kind of manipulation, not because it's moral, but because it's efficient. It uses the same strategy he advised princes to use centuries ago. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. In the world of wealth, fear doesn't always mean terror. It means respect. It means psychological gravity, the aura that makes others hesitate before they challenge you. And here's the paradox. People respect what they can't fully access. They chase what's withheld. They trust what doesn't need to convince them. That's why the quiet, mysterious rich man often commands more power than the loud, visible millionaire, because mystery breeds authority, and scarcity breeds belief. So, the Machiavellian crafts his image like a weapon. He never tells you everything. He reveals fragments just enough to trigger curiosity, just enough to make others project greatness onto him. Because the human mind hates uncertainty. It fills in the blanks with admiration or fear. The strategist uses this to his advantage. In this way, wealth begins long before money arrives. It begins in the imagination of others. This is the third hidden law. Control how others perceive your value, and the world will pay to experience it. That's why true wealth is rarely loud, because loudness is insecurity, made audible. Silence, on the other hand, is proof of control. When you can afford not to explain yourself, people assume you don't need to. The rich who understand this create an aura of inevitability around their success. They make it look as if everything they touch turns to gold. It's not always true, but belief makes it real. Investors, followers, and allies gather around them, feeding the illusion until the illusion becomes fact. This is not deception in the childish sense. It's psychological architecture, the deliberate design of perception to shape reality. Machiavelli would say that power is built not on truth, but on the management of truth. You don't need to lie, you only need to direct what others see. That's how modern rulers rise. They don't conquer with armies, they conquer with stories. And in the digital age, the storyteller has replaced the sword. The billionaire who dominates the market does so not just through innovation, but through narrative control. He makes people believe in his inevitability, that his product, his brand, his vision is destiny itself. That belief becomes capital. Capital becomes expansion. Expansion becomes empire. And the empire, built on perception, becomes indistinguishable from reality. This is why most people fail at wealth. They focus on execution, not narrative. They work in silence, but not strategic silence. They produce, but never position. They accumulate, but never amplify. The Machiavellian knows that perception must precede accumulation. You make people see your value first, and the world will rush to confirm it. Look at every powerful figure in history. They all mastered this principle. Kings surrounded themselves with symbols of authority, crowns, palaces, rituals to create a perception of divine legitimacy. Business leaders today do the same with branding, PR, and media presence. The crown is gone, but the performance remains. That's because humans haven't evolved past symbols. We are still drawn to status markers, still hypnotized by appearances. And those who understand that psychology can print money from thin air, not because they cheat, but because they understand that belief is the economy. That's why Machiavelli's advice still burns through time. To appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright, and to be so, but with the mind so framed that should you require not to be so, you may be able to change to the opposite. That is the art of flexibility, the mark of those who thrive in chaos. Because markets shift, people change, systems collapse, but the psychology of power remains the same. Adaptability is the highest form of intelligence in the pursuit of wealth. The Machiavellian doesn't cling to identity. He wears it like armor, swapping masks as the battlefield changes. When humility sells, he plays humble. When arrogance commands respect, he becomes a tyrant. When silence breeds mystique, he disappears. He is whoever the situation demands, because his loyalty is not to appearance, it's to effectiveness. This fluidity is what separates the rich strategist from the rich fool. The fool thinks money buys power. The strategist knows power manufactures money, and the manufacturing happens in the mind through emotion, fear, envy, and admiration. That's why the dark psychology of wealth isn't about greed. It's about mastery of image, of self, of others. You must learn to control 3 perceptions. 1. How you see yourself. This determines your confidence and emotional stability. 2. How others see you. This determines your opportunities and alliances. 3. How the world interprets your actions. This determines your reputation and therefore your leverage. If you master these 3, money will orbit you like a planet around a star. The weak chase opportunity. The strong create the gravitational field that pulls opportunity in. Machiavelli would say, "It is not enough to act wisely. You must also appear wise." Because perception doesn't just influence reality, it becomes it. And this is the terrifying truth. You don't need to be great to be treated like a king. You only need to look inevitable. So, as you study the psychology of wealth, remember this. Reality is negotiable. Truth is elastic. Power is perception organized with precision. The question is no longer, how can I get rich? The question is, How can I make the world believe I'm valuable enough to deserve riches until it becomes true? That's the art Machiavelli would teach if he lived today. Not the morality of wealth, but the mechanics of belief. Because once you understand that, every limitation turns into leverage, and every illusion can be sold for gold. By now, you understand that wealth is not about effort, luck, or morality. It's about psychology, the ability to shape minds, control perception, and build systems of dependency. But there's one final layer, the one even the powerful rarely reach. It's the point where wealth stops being about others and starts being about self-mastery. Because the last person you must conquer in the pursuit of power is you. The final hidden law of Machiavellian wealth is this: he who cannot rule himself will forever serve another. Money tests men the way power tests kings. It exposes what they fear, what they crave, what they hide. Most people want to get rich to escape themselves, to silence insecurity, to fill the emptiness, to prove something to ghosts from their past. But money doesn't heal weakness, it amplifies it. If you were anxious when you were poor, you'll be paranoid when you're rich. If you were lonely without power, you'll be isolated with it. If you were desperate for validation before wealth, you'll become addicted to attention after it. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. The pursuit of power is not just an external conquest, it's an internal war. And most people lose before they even begin, because they never learn to control their emotions. Emotion is the enemy of wealth. It makes you reactive, predictable, manipulable. Every empire that has ever fallen began with emotional indulgence, arrogance, fear, envy, greed. That's why the Machiavellian doesn't seek balance. He seeks dominance over himself. He trains his mind like a weapon, stripping it of illusion. He knows that money is not freedom, discipline is. Without discipline, wealth owns you. With discipline, you can own anything. This is the paradox of the dark psychology of wealth. The less you need money emotionally, the easier it is to acquire, because detachment breeds clarity, and clarity breeds strategy. While others chase pleasure, you chase precision. While others seek comfort, you seek control. While others panic in chaos, you stay silent, watching, calculating, waiting. Machiavelli would call this the cold eye of power, the ability to see through illusion while everyone else is blinded by emotion. That's the final transformation, to become not just wealthy, but unshakable, to be able to lose everything and rebuild it because you've internalized the architecture of power. He who depends on wealth for identity is fragile. He who uses wealth as a tool is untouchable. That's why the most dangerous man is not the richest. It's the one who can walk away and still remain powerful. Because once you detach from the illusion of needing, you gain leverage over everyone who still does. Machiavelli would smile at this truth. The man who needs nothing controls everything. Every social order, from feudal kingdoms to modern capitalism, is built on the same dual engine, fear and desire. Fear keeps the masses obedient. Desire keeps them moving. It's a simple equation. Give people just enough hope to chase and just enough fear to obey. That's how you build nations. That's how you build billion-dollar industries. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright, but never to be those things if they weakened control. The modern equivalent? Smile, play the game, appear relatable, but never forget that every smile hides a transaction. Every brand that markets purpose is selling profit. Every influencer preaching authenticity is manufacturing image. Every company promising empowerment is mining data. That's the dark psychology of the system. Make people believe they're choosing, when in truth, they're following the path laid out for them. The Machiavellian doesn't resent the system, he studies it. He reverse engineers it. He uses the same tools to create his own gravity. He understands that the world doesn't reward good intentions. It rewards effective manipulation of emotion. This doesn't mean cruelty, it means comprehension. The rich don't exploit people because they hate them. They exploit them because they understand them. They know the worker wants security more than freedom. They know the consumer wants identity more than quality. They know the voter wants hope more than truth, and they give each what they crave in exchange for control. That's why the final mastery of wealth isn't about morality, it's about awareness. To see human nature as it is, not as you wish it to be. To understand that fairness is a myth used to pacify the powerless. Machiavelli never said you must be evil, he said you must understand evil, because to understand it is to defend against it or to use it when survival demands. That's the dark, uncomfortable freedom of power to operate outside moral illusions without becoming corrupted by them. The 3 stages of Machiavellian wealth. Every Machiavellian journey through power follows 3 stages. 1. Dependence. When you work for others, selling your time, obeying structures built by someone else. 2. Dominance. When you begin building your own systems, mastering perception, control, and influence. 3. Detachment. When wealth no longer defines you, when you can manipulate illusion without being trapped by it. Most die in the first stage. Some rise to the second. Very few reach the third. The third is where true freedom begins, because you no longer play the game for validation or security. You play because you enjoy seeing the board clearly. Machiavelli's true brilliance wasn't that he glorified manipulation, it's that he revealed the game that was already there. He showed that moral people lose, not because they're wrong, but because they refuse to acknowledge how the world truly works. The dark psychology of getting rich, therefore, isn't about corruption. It's about clarity. To see the forces that shape behavior and to navigate them consciously instead of emotionally. Because emotion is expensive. It makes you buy things you don't need, chase people who don't matter, and defend illusions that enslave you. The Machiavellian detaches. He trades sentiment for strategy, chaos for composure, comfort for control. He doesn't seek fairness, he seeks leverage. And leverage is the secret thread connecting all power, financial, social, political, psychological. The ability to move others without moving yourself. At the highest level, the pursuit of wealth stops being loud. The real rich move in silence. They own systems, not products. Influence, not attention. Their power isn't visible, it's structural. While others argue about morality and merit, they quietly adjust the rules of the game. That's why Machiavelli's wisdom still echoes in boardrooms and governments. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can feel. The crowd sees success, but they never feel the manipulation behind it. And the Machiavellian smiles, not because he's evil, but because he understands. He knows the system isn't broken, it's designed. And now, you know too. You've seen how comfort enslaves, how perception deceives, how control sustains, and how detachment liberates. You've learned that wealth is not a number, but a network of psychological strings. The question is, will you use that knowledge? Because Machiavelli's final lesson isn't to manipulate others for greed. It's to master yourself so deeply that no one can ever manipulate you again. The dark psychology of getting rich, at its core, is the art of sovereignty, to own your time, your mind, and your reality. When you no longer react, you reign. When you no longer chase, you attract. When you no longer need, you command. And in that silence, not in gold or applause or admiration, you find the one form of wealth no one can steal: power over illusion. That's the ultimate Machiavellian victory. Not the riches you can count, but the control you can't see. Not the applause of men, but the mastery of self. And once you reach that point, you'll understand what the world's most powerful have always known. Money doesn't make you free. Understanding does.